So one of the other things, maybe talk about branding. I know in the book you talk about branding kind of your music, yourself, your products, kind of everything.
Yeah, branding is actually a very, very important topic to talk about. I think it's an area that's very, very misunderstood. I think first what we should say is that branding is not something, a brand image is not something you do. That's something the customer does.
Okay.
What you do is you put together your identity. You have an idea of what you'd like your customers to think about you, and then you create an identity. And if you do that correctly, and if it's believable, if it's consistent, then your audience is going to perceive you the way you want them to perceive you, obviously. If you don't think about this stuff, and you really are not clear about what your identity is, and you just kind of, put yourself out there however you kind of feel at the moment, your audience might get confused. They might not be clear about what it is you do. It might not be strong enough to mean anything to them. And you might go unnoticed. So essentially branding, first and foremost, is very, very important. And there's a couple steps that you can take to brand yourself. Should I talk about them?
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing is your name, obviously. So Ray is a brand, Bobby Borg is a brand. And our parents do that for us. And hopefully they do a good enough job to where we're not going to want to change our names. But in any case, should it be that you wanted to change your name, I think it would be no surprise to people that many artists change their name. For example, Will.i.am is not obviously Will.i.am. It's William was his first name, and he came up with the creative name of making his name a little bit more memorable. So, that's kind of the idea behind that. In the best case scenario, your band name evokes some sort of emotion, that hopefully is what you do.
Right. Cool. And these are kind of things that you can come up with these ideas and use them in your testing and feedback to kind of see if what you're trying to do is working.
Good point. Yes, definitely. You can then go back to some of the things that we talked about, like testing and feedback, and you can test out, hey, when I say this name, does it evoke a particular, image? Do you think of me? So good, because all of these things work together.
Right.
So that's one very, very important aspect. All these classes are not like isolated. They all relate to each other. So that's a good point that you brought up. The branding process can also include actually having a slogan. It could actually include having a mascot, if you so choose to do it, like many groups do. And it also is your attitude, how you dress, how you carry yourself.
Right.
And this is important, and again, something very hard for musicians to think about, because musicians are just all about, it should be about the music, I'm not a model, I'm not a fashion consultant, but it's important, at least at first, because that impression that people immediately have in their mind is going to stick with them, and you want it to be a very concise and very precise and idea that you stand for.
Right. And as uncomfortable as it can almost kind of help you when you're at a loss in your music, kind of going back to that brand and redirecting where you're going.
Yes, so that you're always clear about what it is that you're doing. And then finally, another element that's important to branding as well is not just the company brand, like Bobby Borg, for example, right? But also the product brand. Obviously, and this would be the product brand, music marketing for the DIY musician. So this is the company, that's the product brand. And what you try to do, obviously, is make sure that they're consistent.
Right.
Should there be any inconsistency, let's just say, for example, all of a sudden I decided that I wanted to start writing about romance novels. It might dilute this brand. It might be like, whoa, what is he doing?
Right.
So in that case, I might want to separate this company brand from that product and create maybe what's called a separation strategy. So it's really, really important that your brand is consistent. What you stand for as a company must be consistent with all of your products that you release. So there's no confusion in the marketplace ultimately. So
totally
makes sense? Yeah. All right, so then I guess next we'll talk about promotion, which actually, interestingly enough, is what people think marketing is. And we are like, what, on the 5th or 6th class at this point, or segment? So we're now finally getting to promotion. So hang out, we'll talk about that next. Thanks.